All right. Thank you very much, Jim. So basically, I have this four-part presentation that can go on for an hour, but I've trimmed it down here. So as Jim mentioned here, we'll basically talk about why we collaborate and how to improve collaboration, and then we'll give some best practices. So start off with a postulation here, that collaboration is an important part of the daily forecast process. Yes or no? Think about that for just a moment. We're going to tie this into football here. So say you're walking in to the collaboration process. You've been looking at the forecast all morning. It's a winter weather event here in the upper Midwest. You have the absolute most perfect snow forecast, perfect headline forecast. Everything is just completely perfect. Or you have the perfect quarterback, for example. So we'll take my homerism here and go with Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, as we know, is an excellent quarterback. He walks onto the field, great arm, great everything. But he doesn't necessarily have the tools or the weapons around him. You know, maybe he could be better. Here's this Facebook post that jumped into my mind, or that I saw on Facebook. Touchdown passes to first-round draft picks. Aaron Rodgers won. So basically, he doesn't have much in the help of wide receivers, and you know the cast around him hasn't been that supportive. So this ties into the forecast process. You know, you walk onto the field, you know, you have your perfect forecast ready to go. But if you're the collaboration process of it, if you don't have the tools and the, you know, kind of the weapons to collaborate well with others, to make your point, to really drive your point home, you know, you could maybe lose out in the collaboration process. The neighbors could talk you down off of your perfect forecast. Your headlines could be changed in a way that, you know, kind of makes things worse for you. So, you know, the moral of the story is collaboration is a key part of the forecast process to really be able to drive it home and to get your perfect forecast out there and your perfect headlines collaborated so that we can provide the best service to the public as possible. So basically collaboration, a little aside here, collaboration is a negotiation. Two or more parties, conflicts of needs and desires between the parties, and there's generally a give and take process, and the two sides search for an agreement. So, you know, what we're doing is negotiation on a daily process. Last one, take the dispute to a third party. You know, as a manager, hopefully you're not going to pull in management to it. I'm sure they wouldn't be too thrilled, but nonetheless, you know, basically everything we're doing by definition is a negotiation. So getting to work here. So pretend we have a disagreement on the start time of a headline. So, you know, this is getting down into why is this collaboration that we're doing. If we start from a blank slate, we have several options that we could do. Option number one is avoidance. You know, basically stick your head in the sand. I'm not going to talk to anyone. I'm not going to worry about this forecast. Competition. So, you know, obviously we're not in a competition or shouldn't be, but that is an option. You know, my forecast is going to be better than theirs, and I'm not going to care how it turns out for them. Accommodation. You basically allow the other side to get whatever they want at, you know, your expense without even, you know, putting up a fight or arguing your point, just giving in completely. Then the fourth option is compromising and collaborating. And there's an apple and a pie icon that I chose for these, as we'll see in just a moment. So going back to a paper from 1993, these people came up with what's called the dual concern model. So on the y-axis going up and down, you have concern about other people's outcomes. On the bottom of the axis, the x-axis, you have concern about your own outcomes. And so avoidance means that you're concerned the least about your outcome, and you're also concerned the least about the other's outcomes. So that's why it's way down the left there. And, you know, we can go throughout the rest of them here. Accommodation, you don't really care about your own outcome, but, you know, fine, you know, the other people can get what they want. And competition is, you know, the other way. You don't care what their forecast looks like or how well it's collaborated with them, but you just want your own forecast. So taking those away, here's what it looks like if you translating this to the Weather Service. You know, if you don't really care about the other's outcomes, the grids might appear uncollaborated. If you don't really care about your own outcome, it might not be the best possible service. You know, by definition, you're not caring about how the forecast comes out and how the headlines come out. So simply by just caring, we've now eliminated it and narrowed it down to compromising and collaboration is just our two options. So does compromising equal collaborating? Looking at the definition of these words, the key word in this is mutually. So compromise, we're promised mutual things, mutual concession. We'll each give something up in order to try to get this forecast through. Collaboration, on the other hand, I don't see the word mutual in there, mutually giving anything up. It's basically they're trying to seek solutions that are an advantage to all the parties. So we're talking about starting to work together a little bit. And we'll get into that a little bit more in just a moment. But compromising here, if we break this down, WFOA wants a 14Z start to the headline. WFOB wants a 16 Zulu start, boom, compromising. We'll start at 15Z. Models can do this. Collaborating, on the other hand, the key here is to really look for ways that we can add value to the public. And to get to this point, where are our shared interests is a really key question to ask. And the best part is, since we're all on the same team, it's very easy to ask these shared interests. So if you have two WFOs that are, kind of struggling when to start a headline, maybe WFOB has some sort of event or something, or WFOA has some sort of an event, yeah, we'll start it maybe at 16Z, we'll lean towards WFOB because that'll be the better value for the public. That'll help us expand the pie, if you will. And that's really where we come in as forecasters too, is the added value for the public. If we go back to this, slicing the pie, models can do that. Where does that leave humans in the forecast process? Think 5-10 years down from the road, what our jobs would look like if we, didn't collaborate, if we would have a forecasting job. Really, that's where our goal is, where we add value for the public, where we expand the pie, where we can have shared interests that can really help get the best forecast out there to benefit the most people as possible. So for this session, or the little section part here, one last tidbit, fact or fiction about making the first offer. So think to yourself for a moment, should you make the first offer generally in a negotiation? Well, some research here shows that there's a 0.85 correlation with final outcomes between when the first offer is made and the final offer. So the first offers really, through this research, show that they start as an anchor point. So if you toss out a start time for a headline, that's kind of an anchor point. Your odds are pretty good that the final solution is going to be at least somewhat in the ballpark of your headline. So moral of the story there is, don't be afraid to make the first offer. And, if you're confident in your forecast, don't be afraid to jump on it. Okay, next part here, again, we're skipping the second part. So this is how to improve collaboration here. Basically, too, I forgot to mention. So basically what I have in 2015, I got my MBA from Iowa State, and I took two negotiation classes and did a couple other conflict resolution things throughout. So basically everything I learned throughout that program is I'm trying to toss it into here to be as most helpful as we can here. And things that I learned are parsed down to this as well, the management of the tangibles. So we have the headline start time, headline stop time, the flavor, all that stuff. And we have the intangibles. And so this is what I learned, kind of condensed down into a way that it can help us here in the Weather Service. The intangibles, individual differences, and persuasion is things to manage. Individual differences. So we all have differences, personality, social values, conflict style, face threat. Our neighboring office, could be a GS7 forecaster and I could be a GS13 step 10, and I'm not going to let a GS7 forecaster tell me when to start my headlines. Obviously, as wrong as that seems, that is something that kind of gets put into the mix of collaboration for some people. Cognitive biases, overconfidence, my forecast is great. Information bias, I really love the NAM, so whatever the NAM says, I'm going to forecast. If you have one office with favoring one model, another office favoring another model, obviously there could be differences there that need to be resolved. One good book that's an interesting read, the point of it is communication as simple as saying what you mean? When we communicate here in collaboration, a lot of the sort of who gets heard portion of it comes down to lots of factors. It's not necessarily sometimes the best forecast or the best voice, but sometimes it's the loudest voice, or sometimes it's the person who is the highest grade level. All sorts of things factor into it. So kind of an interesting read if you look into that, but those are all things to keep in mind. Getting to the persuasion part of it. Okay, so now how do we start? Let's get in here. How do we start improving persuasion? How we can help improve getting our point across? So we have 4 tools in the toolbox here: establishing credibility, framing your goals in a way that identifies common ground. So identifying common ground with others, reinforce your position using evidence, and lastly, connecting emotionally. Establishing credibility, some control in that. Obviously, the relationship building part of it. Are you showing integrity, trustworthiness? Trust is a really big one. If your neighbors can trust that, you're working hard in your forecast, and you want the best outcome for everyone, that's going to go a long way. Expertise, a history of making good forecasts. And then the second tool here, framing common ground. So if your credibility is high, so if you got the first tool nailed, your position must appeal to those who you're collaborating with. So the best part is that we're all on the same team once again. And so if we're kind of struggling to, figure out what the key ingredients here in this cake we're baking, simply ask the other person, do you want chocolate chips or do you want oatmeal raisin? We're on the same team, so you can ask people. So, ask people what they would like, and try to put out what you would like. So we're framing common ground here. And then another thing here is understanding your audience. So this is going back to individual differences. So sometimes your audience is, might not have a lot of confidence. They might be their 8th mid in a row and they're tired, so they might not want to be bothered with all sorts of kind of minutia details. So just kind of having an overall understanding of who you're negotiating with will help also. Providing evidence, that's what we're the best at. Scientific reasoning, start laying out why you think the headline should start at 15Z, why you think a certain precipitation type will be favored over another. That's right in our wheelhouse. And sometimes also what you can do is cite examples of similar proposals that have paid off in the past. We had this type of a setup. The screenshot down there, it was whiteout conditions. So this looks very similar to what we've had in the past on May 12th or March 12th. So I think we need to have at least a winter weather advisory, blah, blah, blah. And then lastly, connecting emotionally, is a lot of introverted thinkers. Sometimes connecting emotionally is a little bit more of a challenge, but really just showing that you care is a great starting point. If you're asking, how do I connect emotionally? Show that you care, show that you're committed. And then again, being aware of your audience's feelings. I saved this screenshot once a couple of years ago. So obviously the office to my south and west, they're kind of communicating their feelings. They don't know if they should go, get some 15 or 25 pops in there to get some sort of weather category going, or, if they shouldn't. So I would think in this case, a whisper would be all that's needed to get that office to either jump in one direction. So just kind of, trying to be aware of things such as that. But then strategies to improve collaboration. Perspective taking is a key one. So put yourself in the other office's shoes. If you're talking about, if we just take yesterday, for example, we have a wind advisory situation kind of across our state of Iowa here that's going on right now. Yesterday, we also had severe weather threatening much of eastern Iowa. So, on Monday, for me to be harping about getting a wind advisory out to my southeastern office that's going to be contending with severe weather, that might not be on the top of their priority list because fending off, slight risk of severe weather is probably the top priority. So just being aware of what the other office has going on as well is definitely going to help out collaboration. Again, like I've hinted throughout, asking questions, getting their interests and your priorities, and sharing your interests and your priorities. I want to issue this headline. I'd like to get this out before the new news because it's gonna, have a good public reach, or I'd like to issue a wind advisory because we have a lot of COVID tents set up. So just kind of like the nudgers, yeah, even though winds might only be, 27 miles an hour, nudgers being the COVID tent. So yeah, that's kind of a high priority for me. More of the story is we're all on the same team. All right, so this one's fun. So when making a request, how you word it makes a difference. So pretend you're one of these first two people in line here for this copy machine, and you've been standing there for 15, 20 minutes. You're kind of grumbly and waiting for your turn. Someone cuts in front of you, and they say, "Excuse me, I have 5 pages. May I use the Xerox machine?" So think of how you're going to react to that. You've been standing in line. Maybe okay. Well, there was a study done where people did this question, and 60% of the people said, sure, you can use it. Not very happy about it, but okay. So a slight majority. Then in their study, they altered the question. May I use the Xerox because I'm in a rush? Oh, okay. Well, maybe then I will. Well, 94% of the people said, sure, we're nice people. We're all family here at the Weather Service. So boom, you can use it. Then they took the study the next step. May I use the Xerox machine because I have to make some copies? So think about, as silly as that sounds for a moment. Okay, you're not microwaving a pizza. So may I use it because I have to make some copies? So think of the response, what you would think there. 93% of the people said that, sure, you can. So the moral of the story is, senseless as the because might be. I use a copy machine because I have to make copies. Like that, obviously don't word it like that. But the moral of the story is, simply adding, using a question first off, rather than a barking command, like I am going to issue this headline. Using the word because, would you like to issue, have the headline start at this time because ... You can support it with your science, explanation, and that's kind of putting everything together there. That's a good way to get collaboration going there. The last section here, best practices. Shout out to my Central Lead classmates here. I kind of crowdsource some best practices here, so I'm just going to zing through some of these, and then we'll be done. So best practices here, the tone you type in your chat may not be received how you intended. So, obviously, we're sitting at a computer screen. People can't tell the tone of our chat. So just be kind of careful how you word things. Once you hit enter on the keyboard, you can't take it back. So make sure you mean what you post. Sometimes pause for a moment or two before you hit enter. We all know this device here, the telephone. If collaboration's not going well, if you're going to have to type out a long paragraph to try to get a neighbor to go along with you, sometimes just picking up the phone is easy. Especially on midnight shifts, we're not busy. Pick up, make a call, and I've never had time in my forecasting career where a phone call has led to me being angry at someone or not finishing the collaboration process. It's always had positive outcomes. So simple tool there. Don't make assumptions about who's on the other end. Again, you don't know what their current mood is, what they're going through. Don't assume that your neighbor is thinking the same thing you are. Sometimes, well, yeah, obviously, the NAM is out to lunch today, and convective feedback land. Maybe the other office might not think so. So just don't assume that. Sometimes you do get upset, walk away for a couple minutes before responding. Kind of the whole, don't say something you might regret. Focus on the big picture items. Especially if the other office, putting yourselves in the other office's shoes, if they have other things going on. Sometimes the day 4 sky grids might not be on the top of their priority list. Be proactive. Don't wait until everybody's about ready to publish. Think of, I'm sure we've all been on the receiving end of that, how unpleasant that may have been for us. Once we're ready to click publish, someone jumps in with a headline recommendation. And that goes along too with making the first offer. Obviously, you're not making the first offer if it's 3:35 p.m. Central Time and you're slinging out wanting to put out a headline. Also, again, be cognizant of what your neighbors are dealing with. Something that I like to do if I feel like I'm going to be issuing a headline, or it might be a headline day, in the morning when we first get in, I'll chime something out, hey, I'm going to be focusing on the potential need for a winter weather advisory across my Northwest. Obviously I'm going to wait till more model data comes in, et cetera, but this is what I'm thinking. So it kind of starts to lay the groundwork out. And that's also consistent with making the first offer as well. I've put that bug out there. So, that's kind of starting an anchor point that there might be an advisory. Of course, there might not be, it could evolve to where one's not needed, but, that anchor point's ready to be out there and it's ready to get started. And then something I've seen a couple other people do that I kind of like also is putting the initials at the end of the collaboration chats. Not every single one, but maybe if you type out like a big scientific, justification and want a big change, kind of putting your initials is, kind of like signing your AFD or signing a headline. You're kind of putting your stamp on it. Your personal, showing that you care. I'm putting my name out there on this. It just kind of takes it to that next level, perhaps. So some good input there. And last but not least, a thank you can go a long way. Hey, thanks for the chat. We're in a long-term relationship here. This isn't a short-term, one and done. We're collaborating. We get our headline, then we're done. We're never going to speak with, that other forecaster in the office next to us ever again. That's not true. It's a long-term process. So part of maintaining and building that relationship is just a simple thank you. It can go a long way and helps lay out the groundwork for good future collaborations. And on that note, thank you for watching, and I'll leave you with this. Probably one of the most important quotes that I found again is the ability to see the situation from the other side. And then when you you can see that, you have your forecast coming into it, and you can really target where you want to collaborate and what you want to collaborate, and yeah, hopefully get a good headline out and really complete the forecast process of getting the best possible product out there to the public.
Very good.